am very happy to be here. The biggest issue I had preparing this class was like, I'm nervous because there's so many things that I want to share with you that I was trying to figure out how to get it all in and how to share it all now. I also would like to, I want you to tell me too, because in all of my cooking classes that I do in Italy, I always like to know what people want to know, because there was something that intrigued you about being here, and other than my lovely personality, I'm sure. And so I want to know what you want to get out of the class, and I can incorporate it in, and we can do special things if you're signed up for the whole series, which I hope you are, because this is just the tip of the tongue of all of this. And we're going to take everything that we talk about today and then start to put it into the experience of cooking with different ingredients. And I am a plant-based eater. I've been this way for the last 3 years because of health concerns and issues for me and my partner. But I have always appreciated vegetables and fruits. And the other thing I love is a challenge. I grew up, I was on a diet at 2. And my mother insisted, you know, because she had a weight issue. And so I was dieting my whole life. And there was always this challenge of how to make food taste good when you only have 6 things you can eat. So I love that. I went to culinary school, and they gave us market baskets. And that was my favorite thing. They give you those, like on the cooking shows now, they give you some things to do, and you've got to create meals out of it. So I love those things, and that I continue to do that and continue to learn and experiment with a lot of things. I'm sorry, did somebody say something?
No, I'm going away.
Oh, okay. Don't go way too far. Okay, so I'm going to give a little bit about me, just like 2 minutes. I'm Italian. Like I said, I grew up cooking with my mom and my grandmother since I was 2. Right at the same time, I had my ears pierced, probably. But I had the good fortune to try everything. I eat everything. My grandpa would butcher goats, and we had chickens and rabbits, and we lived in the suburbs, but in those days you could. And like and you're going to think I'm weird, but so you understand where this comes from. He would take a goat's head and he would split it down the middle, and then he would put it in the oven with garlic and olive oil, and he would roast it. And for me, that was like a TV dinner. It's the weirdest thing. I know it sounds odd, but it was like, oh, you know, a little bit of the brains and the cheeks and the meat around the bone and everything. I know it sounds weird. Andy's having a heart attack. I can see him. But, it
doesn't sound weird to me.
Okay, it opens you up.
The muffies, capuccio. That's what they used to call it.
Really? Yeah. I love that. I never heard that term, but that makes sense.
There used to be places in Hoboken, like 1 or 2 places you would go, they have the oven and they would cook it for you.
Awesome. So, okay, I'm not so
gross.
Anyway, I know that these things, like, I believe that food is not just to eat and to nourish you, because we grow up with all kinds of prerequisites for what's good, but also for what's bad. And they get in there, and they, you know, the textures and things that we liked or we didn't like. So I want to ask you, and it is love. I grew up with food as love. So I want you to be a little open, maybe try to get past some of the things that we learned. I'll give you a quick example, because I'm going to use Michael a lot, because I've been eating with him for 25 years and all over the world. And he doesn't like he's a big texture guy. Like something happened in his childhood, I don't know. But he has an issue with certain textures. And so we'll be out somewhere, and we're eating, and I go, oh my God, this is so good. Isn't that good? Like, isn't that, and he'll go, he does this thing, and I'll go, what? And he'll say, I don't like the texture. And I said, okay, but what about the sauce and the garlic and the thing? And he'll go, and he won't eat it. So these things are important. Texture and all this stuff is important, because he will not eat that dish because of the texture. He would eat the same sauce on spaghetti, but he won't eat the tripe. I don't know, but that's it. And I grew up loving tripe. Man, a bowl of my grandma's tripe with a half a loaf of bread, I'm all right. So these are the things that we need to define for ourselves and when we're creating a dish. I have my notes because I can tangent. So I'm trying to keep myself where we're going. Okay, so let's go right into what is flavor, what is taste. We have our tongue, our soft palate, and our taste buds. And this is also, by the way, going to be recorded. So if you want, you'll have access to it for a while so you can refer back to it. So on the tongue, we taste sweet, salty. Oh, wait. I can share this lovely diagram. Hold on, let me see if it will actually come up. So we have sweet on the tip, salty on the sides. Oh, I had to reboot my computer, I've lost it. Okay, never mind. Sorry about that. So sweet, salty right behind on the sides, sour, bitter in the back, and in the center, umami. Now, this is savory, but now we call it umami because it's more than savory. Savory could be salty, it could be whatever, but umami is mushrooms. It is pork, it's prosciutto. It's not just salty, it's deeper flavor, richer flavor, rounder flavors. It is I think it's a Japanese word that we've taken on. So umami is the center of your tongue. Now, there's a lot of debate about whether these are real sections, and I myself have questions.
Linda, what is the spelling of the center spot of the tongue?
Umami, U-M-A-A-M-I. Umami, umami. I don't know, I think of that song every time I hear the word. These are universally recognized at this point, but there's some debate about whether the tongue actually, those are actual areas. So the other day, and lately since I've been putting this together, I was very aware and I wanted to see if all that was true. And I realized that I'm a nut job when it comes to tasting things because I do this weird thing. Like so I had a green drink. It was parsley, fennel, celery, cucumber, some apple. I think that's it. And so I drank it and it hit my tongue and then I was like, And I was like, the back of my tongue picked up the bitter. I didn't taste the bitter at first. I tasted it later. And then I realized it made me think that I am very sensitive. And I would like you all to do this in the next week or two, to notice these things. Because I realize I'm very sensitive to bitter all the time. Like I'll taste bitter when nobody else tastes it. And it made me remember, I went to the dentist about 4 or 5 years ago. And when you're at the dentist, ask them, or you can look yourself. And the hygienist came over and she was cleaning my teeth. I hadn't met her before. And then the doctor comes over to, and she goes, and then he goes, and he leaves. And I was like, what was that about? What happened? What did I got? And she said, oh, no, it's nothing. She said, apparently you have enlarged taste buds in the back of your mouth, in the back of your tongue. And I was like, oh, that explains a lot. And that's where we taste bitter. So it made a lot of sense to me the other day. It was like I had this epiphany, why I'm always tasting bitter when other people don't. But so in that respect, I believe it's true. However, if you take salt, like sometimes if you're at my mother's house, you don't know which bowl is sugar and which is salt. And so you got to taste it. And you go like that, you'll taste the salt here. Even though you're not here, you'll taste it. And there are other things. So I think it's a deeply personal thing. I think it can change person to person, as a lot of these things do. So, but check it out for yourself. I think it's really fascinating. And it's important to know as you are in your search, because this is personal. We're trying to cook for ourselves and the people we love, but we always cook what we like, unless we're paid to do it for somebody else. So the soft palate also, the soft palate is really more about texture. And that's where that sensor is. And what am I taste buds. Okay, we covered the tongue. And now, taste, which is happening in the tongue, is a major component of flavor. Flavor is, well, there's another step that we need for flavor. And I'll give you an example, and then you tell me what you think it is. So when you have a cold, you'll have a cup of hot, you'll say, I can't taste anything. But actually you can't, because if you have a cup of tea, you know it's hot, temperature you got, and that's part of flavor. So you know it's hot and you know it's sweet because it has honey in it, but you don't know it's honey and you don't know it's Earl Grey, probably. So you can taste, the tongue can taste, but what's missing?
The smell.
Right, the olfactory and aroma. Aroma is missing, and aroma is very important. It's the other half of, it's what makes taste flavor.
Mhm.
Because we can taste bitter, sweet, sour, and salty,
Yeah.
umami, but we can't flavor without the olfactory and the aroma. And then the other things that I think are very important, even if somebody poo-poos them, is texture. As I said, use the example with Michael. If you don't like the texture of something, you will totally disregard the flavor. So I think that it plays a big role in flavor. Texture does. And temperature also. Ice cream, for example. So I always love this example. So ice cream, if you've made, how many of you have made ice cream? Just raise your hand. If you've made ice cream from scratch, what is the thing that you have to do? You have to add more what? Sugar. You have to add more sugar to the ice cream. So if you're making the ice cream, let's call it a batter, because I can't think of a word now,
Yep.
and you taste it, and you go, ooh, that tastes good. It has to be sweeter than you would want it to be. Why? Because cold affects flavor. When you taste ice cream, you'll take a scoop of ice cream and your mouth goes, woohoo, it's cold, yippee! And it gets really excited. And when it gets excited, it can't taste the flavor. You know, it just can't, because it's too excited. Your taste buds are just too alert and over censored. So then you have to hold it in your mouth a little bit, and you have to, that's why the last bit of ice cream, that last one is so good, because it has warmed up, your mouth has warmed everything up, and now as it warms up, you start to taste more and more of the flavor of the ice cream. It isn't that the chemical changes in the ice cream, it's your mouth, the perception and the connection to your brain.
Linda, can I ask a question about spicy food,
Yes.
levels of spice? Because I'm incredibly sensitive to spice, and then I lose all taste because the
Yeah.
spice overwhelms and I'm crying and whatever, and I'm doing a lot more cooking now, and something will call for spice and I can't put it in, so I kind of allow Michael to put something in after. But
Right.
is it the same kind of thing, except it's heat versus cold?
It is. It's the same stimulation as cold, because peppers or of any kind is something that's going to stimulate your taste buds. And as cold can be painful. I'm with you. I'm the same way. My mom could eat things that were so spicy, and I go, but what's the point? And it's more of a sensation. And I don't know if it goes to texture. I'm not sure. I think it's an extra one that we might need to add, because it's a sensation that's why you say levels of spiciness. So, you and I have been out to dinner where a little bit is okay, as long as it balance is something else we're going to talk about. It balances for me, but a lot of people like a lot of spice. And I'm always curious as to why, and doesn't it cover up the flavor for them?
Yeah.
I can't understand when somebody's lips are absolutely numb, and they're sweating, and what do you taste? Is it just like,
No, that's right. Taste.
kill yourself, self, I don't get it,
The only thing I can think of is perhaps in folks who, like in Indian cuisine and Thai cuisine, that the people, like it's a cultural thing, and so they eat a lot of it. And so maybe they're, as my taste buds are larger in the back, who knows, their mouths are more accustomed to eating spice. And after the initial taste bud, that they're able to they adapt, their taste buds adapt, and they're able to get the flavor come through. I'm not
Actually, in India, for example, and you're not eating the food, you're eating the mixture of spices for the food. And so if you're making a potato dish, you have these specific spices, and you have a lentil dish with this, and you have this dish with that. But are you eating it because it's nutritious? Or are you eating it because of the essence of the spices and the textures?
Well, that's a very personal thing, and that's why it's important, as we're going to get into later, that we have personal flavor profiles. Flavor profiles is something you probably can imagine, like Mexican, Italian, those are profiles. And then we have our own. And we know what we lean towards, what we like. And yes, so that's that, I believe. To me, it's a little masochistic, but I don't know. That's something that people love. My mom used to sit there with tears, and I never understood what appealing that is. I guess it's like people go and get piercings. I got my nose pierced years ago, and I realized that there is kind of a rush after. So I understand. So there's something, adrenaline, I don't know what it is, but yeah, it is a personal preference, but it does affect, like texture, it does affect people's perception and whether they like or don't like something, for sure. Any other questions up to this point? Okay, so we got, oh yeah, temperature, we were on temperature. So temperature, hot is the same thing like tea, hot temperature. He always says, and he always waits for tea to cool because he wants to taste more of it. Same thing, too much overstimulation of temperature. Or if you get a cold cup of coffee, that's not good either. So there are a lot of things that we have to balance when we're cooking. Wine and beer also, interestingly, my ex did a whole beer thing, and one day he said, "Here, taste, this is so good, this is this kind of beer." And I was like, "That's awful, it's room temperature." He goes, "That's how you taste beer." And I said, "Great, I've tasted, now chill it and let's drink it," because I didn't understand how you would taste how you would drink a whole, in wine too, when you're tasting wine, especially white wine, you don't want it to be too cold, not like you want it to be when you're enjoying a meal. So those are all about temperature. And we don't want to forget color, because there's a saying in Italian, prima si mangia con gli occhi. First you eat with your eyes. And you know when something looks appetizing, and you know when something doesn't. A great example of this too, we were in Florence with a group, and we're having lunch in this restaurant, and there's a dish called ribollita, which is vegetable soup. It's very thick and made with bread. And I remember this woman ordered it, and when it came to the table, it was a big brown blob in the bowl, but a brown blob. And she goes, "Oh, no, I ordered the soup." And I said, "Yeah, there are different ways to make a ribollita, and you don't see it very often this way anymore. But it's a peasant dish, and they would go out, they throw any random vegetable or anything left over they had, put it in a big pot. They'd put white beans in there. They'd put pieces of carrot, zucchini, whatever they had, they throw in it. Black cabbage, everything. Go out into the fields, work, come back, stir it up and go, throw bread in there, maybe throw a little water in, and go out. They needed hearty food. They didn't have a lot of meat, so they needed hearty food, and it would just cook and cook and cook. Now, I remember that day of this brown blob, and I said, "Yes, this is a ribollita. This must be the way they do it. Let's taste it." And it was delicious. It was so good. And the brown, by the way, came from tomato. that had cooked into it. It wasn't burnt or anything because they slow cook it. And it was delicious. But there's eye perception and then taste. You know, it can be confusing sometimes, but important to consider. Any questions? Okay. So in recapping, no, really, do you have a question, Cindy?
No, but I'm relating to everything you're saying because you're talking about Indian cuisine, and I try because I like to try different things. I don't like curry, and I don't like things like associated in that. I don't even like cinnamon, you know. So I'm just like, you know, it's kind of all related, you know. So
Spices are not your thing.
I love spice, just not those spice, like in that kind of category. I
That
don't know.
profile.
My profile.
It's not your Indian is not your flavor profile. You're not going
It
there.
is not. I mean, I love like Mexican, and
Well, Mexican has cumin in it, so cumin is
No, I
okay.
like cumin. I love
Okay.
cumin.
All right, good to know.
Yeah.
No, I mean good to know
it's
for you.
weird, like how and like I said, I try different things, and so.
You know, there's a reason why in India they use so many spices. In history, they did not have great ingredients because it was a very poor country and a lot of people. And they didn't have great vegetables, and the meat was always tough. And so they had to use spices to tenderize and to add flavor. And that's where their flavor comes from. It's interesting, actually, to know. That's what's so fascinating about the world and what people eat and where they eat. Is like, that's why Italy, everyone loves Italy because it's fresh. They have beautiful climate. You know, they have, and from the top to the bottom, from the top to the heel and the toe, they have beautiful weather. They can do everything fresh. It's a much fresher cuisine. But India wasn't like that. So yeah, but that's good to know. It's good to know for you, and it shapes who you are. And it's good to consider when you're cooking, because you're going to understand a lot more about how you want to create something.
Exactly.
So flavor is really the art of combining these tastes and temperature, texture, juicy, mouthfeel. We're going to talk about mouthfeel all the time. And we are going to also learn to build flavor. I know some of you who are good cooks understand everything I'm talking about. And building flavor is important because, and it doesn't have to be, because there are many different ways to do it. But like there's something really simple. These are from my garden. Slice one of these with a little salt, you're good. So you've just built that. You just built that dish, two things. But there are times when we want, and we don't have to. That's the other thing. We don't have to build flavors. Certainly we can just eat boiled frozen green beans, but you don't want to do that. You want food to be the thing that not only nourishes you, but that excites you, that's sensual. So in the building of the flavor, we will also understand for ourselves what we like and how we're going to do it. It's that thing when you're cooking, you go, this needs something. And you're going to know what that is because you're going to go through all these taste profiles and you're going to go, okay, does it have this? Does it have that? Does it have that? Does it have that? I don't know if I told you, I think I did mention that 3 years ago I went into this crazy diet of, we call plant-based. And we were, in the beginning, we were truly down to just a handful of ingredients because it was, and I've always believed that food can be not only pleasure and nourishment, but also healing. And that's what we did. And it is, I'll tell you that. And I'm not going to proselytize or talk about it, but if you ever wanted to talk to me about it, you certainly can, because it is, and it should be healthy and it should nourish you. That's not to say that you can't have, bacon. If you want to. But for someone like me, I've had to learn how to recreate, okay, what's bacon? What does it have? It's crispy, it's umami, it's salty, it's this, that, and the other. It has mouthfeel, it has crunch. So I've had to, it's really been an awesome adventure. I've had to study what I liked and what bacon brings me, and how to recreate it with the ingredients that I choose to have in my diet now. And it's been so much fun. And you know, some of those things I want to share with you, but at the same time, these are not things that need to, you know, you don't have to take bacon out of your diet if you don't want to, certainly. And I will not probably talk about making a roast or frying pork chops, but but if you have questions about meat and using it, I will mention meat alternatively to what I'm going to present, because you can always add shrimp to a cucumber soup, you know, or something like that, always. And it will only enhance it even more. My challenge and my joy is to figure out, I'm going to show you something today, later. It's a melon soup, and I make it in Italy with crispy prosciutto. And I'm not going to use prosciutto. But I have had to then think, okay, what can I use that's just as good as that? Okay. The first day of culinary school, I walked into the room, and he has written on the board, fat equals flavor. Lesson number 1. So, yes, absolutely. However, what I have learned in my life, then on 17 million diets, and just as I get older, you know, trying to cut down on the fat, it does not have to rule flavor. It does not. And I really, really want to say this. You do not have to add a lot of flavor. It's sometimes in some restaurants and people cooking, it's a cop-out, because sure, you add a ton of olive oil to something and it's going to taste better, and sometimes it's not. You're going to ruin it. But there are so many things that can, as we're talking here today, that that can also, that you're not going to miss that, you know, fat, you know, lard or whatever that you're cooking, unless you're eating straight lard. When I moved to Italy, when I was a singer for many years there, and the first dinner I had with the producer of this nightclub that I was working in, I sat down, I was vegetarian at the time, and I sat down in the family to have dinner in the restaurant. And they passed me this platter of lardo. Lardo is cured belly fat of the pig. And there's no meat on it at all. It's just the fat. And they cure it with salt and pepper, and they use red pepper too on this for months and months. And then they slice it very thin. And then they give you this beautiful crusty bread. And it's delicious. And so she said, Alina, lardo. And I said, no, signora, scusa, sono vegetariana. And she said, vegetariana? Ma questo va bene. She said, this is good for you. And I said, really? And she said, yes. She said, because it refreshes your intestines. And I said, okay, give me some of that. And that was the end of my vegetarianism right there, first day. And there I was. What?
Told you it was delicious.
Yeah, no, I know. I wasn't always a vegetarian. Anyway, so these are the things. And what was good about that? It was the umami and salty and texture and the crunch of the bread. So, you know, we can recreate those things. It's not going to be, oh God, I'm showing my bald spot, aren't I? That's awful. Don't do that. We don't have to have those things. And we don't, if you can eat bacon, eat it. But I make carrot bacon. And it satisfies a part of my cravings, you know, and it is, excuse me one second, Verizon is calling. Hi, yes, everything's great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I just had to tell them, sorry. Okay, so some techniques.
You know, Linda?
Yes, oh, go ahead.
So I'm really glad you brought up the fat issue, because I can no longer eat fats in my diet. So, and flavor is really important to me. So I'm really glad you brought up how to make prosciutto and bacon out of things that I may be able to eat. Oh, that is just so exciting.
I never said that I was going to help you make prosciutto out of carrots. But we can come close. We can come close. We can, look, it's all about being satisfied. And here's the thing. If we are, this is unfortunately what happens in America. When we are not satisfied, when we are eating food that is plastic, that is fast food, that is really, it's just, they throw in a bunch of salt and fat in there and they don't, that's just two tastes. It's not flavor.
I know.
And we buy that and we go into that and you keep eating, you keep eating. I do it myself when there's something that is, I serve something that isn't right and I keep eating, waiting to get that thing, that satisfaction. Right. That satisfaction from something that is never going to happen. And so, and that's what we want to learn. I'm sorry, I lost my my view of everyone. So that's, I'm so happy you said that because that's what we're going to do. And in a minute, I'm going to go around to everyone and I want to ask you what you want to learn from this class. What enticed, why you said, yeah, okay, I want to do that class. But I'm going to cover one more thing about techniques to intensify flavor. First, I want to say keeping the flavor in. We use a lot of vegetables now for my garden, zucchini, carrots, you know, whatever. If you want to cook, like, for example, my grandmother used to make this dish. She would boil whole, probably not this big. This guy stayed too long. But whole zucchini, whole carrot, whole potatoes, that. And then she would cool them, cut them up, put them in a bowl with basil, little salt, and a little olive oil. It was so good because you would never chop this up if you're thinking of boiling it. Carrots too. Potatoes, so many times people will cut up potatoes if they're gonna make mashed potatoes because it's quicker. Don't do it. If you wanna do that, roast them. Roasted potato salad, it's awesome. But don't do that because when you cut something up, a vegetable especially, or even meat, same thing with the meat. If you want to do a roast, you do it whole, you know, and if you're going to make a chop out of that, then you're going to have to impart flavor. You're going to put the flavor onto it because it's going to leach out nutrients and flavor. So caramelizing, we all know about caramelized onions, right? Everybody know what caramelizing is in respect to an onion? Yeah, okay. So it's just, what happens is the onion, the heat, the edges lose the water content and the sugars come out and it gets a nice little brownness, and that's what happens. And it makes flavor, it accents the flavor of the onion. And then people were doing this with meat. And when I was in culinary school, on the first week when we got into meat, he said, browning meat, there was this theory that browning meat would lock in the juiciness. That is not true. And he said that is not true. But for years, this was given as a technique. It looks nice, and it does add flavor, but it doesn't lock anything. And you know this, if you should never salt a steak before you put it on the barbecue or in the pan, because do we know what happens with salt?
It likes the juices out of it.
Exactly, the juices come out. So you would cook it and then put the salt in, and often if you did that, you'd see the blood come to the top. So it'll still do that. There's no locking. You can't lock it. So it also applies to meat, not just vegetables. So if you do want to cut things up small or whatever, you better be sure you're going to impart flavor. Roasting also is how to intensify the flavor of vegetables and meats. Also, though, nuts and seeds. For a lot of health reasons, people eat nuts that are raw, which is very good. But if you're using them to flavor something, then you might consider toasting them because it'll change. Toasted sesame seeds are a different animal than, well, they're not animal, different totally from raw sesame seeds. That gives a lot of flavor. Tomatoes also, right now, and in Italy, I'm sorry, I keep talking about Italy, but I miss it so much, and the vegetables and fruits there, but we're getting great tomatoes now, especially the little ones that are so sweet. They're already really sweet. And I tortured a assistant of mine in Italy one year because he was a chef in a restaurant. He came to Tuscany where I didn't even have a blender. and he wanted to be all fancy and everything. I said, honey, here we're doing simple food. We're doing flavorful, simple food because you're in Italy. You don't need to roast those tomatoes for 2 hours to serve them. Because he was looking down, he was like, well, aren't you going to roast those tomatoes to make it more flavorful? And I said, here, eat one. And he goes, that's really good. I said, uh-huh. So yeah, you can. Absolutely, you can. But my mission there was to show people how wonderful everything was on its own, how beautiful vegetables were. But you can. Roasting a tomato is different than having it in a skillet. And it does the same thing. It browns and it intensifies the sugars and it can make it a whole different flavor. To me, that's not making it better. It's just imparting a different flavor.
Tanya has a question, Linda.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Is roasting the same as baking?
Excellent question.
Sorry?
Excellent question. So it depends on your intention. If you're talking about a setting on your oven,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, more or less. Some ovens, if they're fancy, they have like, you can put it on because I don't know how your oven works. Roasting is different than baking in intention because you're roasting in a pan and you're doing it because you want to achieve a goal. Baking, you wouldn't roast a cake, let's say.
No. I'm saying I was referring to not roasting a cake, but rather my oven is really one of the very cheap ones, and it has bake,
And
not bake, or that thing on top, broil.
broil. It has bake and not bake.
Well, you're either baking or off, or broiling or off, but that's all it has.
Oh, so you've got bake and broil.
Yeah.
You're fine. That's all you gotta have.
Okay, so that
You can still roast. You can still roast in an oven that's just baked. Yeah.
right. Okay, so
It's
the words are interchangeable then.
yes, like I said, it depends on what we're talking about. If we're going to talk about roasting a vegetable, you know that it isn't about the oven setting, it's about what you're doing in your pan.
Got it.
And so the terms are really applied to the food and not settings, more or less.
Linda, is roasting usually done at a higher temperature
Than baking?
than baking?
It depends, but again, it's the intention. So for example, potatoes, roasted potatoes,
Yeah.
there was this formula that I got in culinary school, 400 degrees for 40 minutes. That's supposed to be the ideal temperature. Now, I hate to give out that information because who knows, if you live in Seattle, I live in New York City, it might be a little different. So don't, call me and complain if it's not perfect. Because that's the other thing. We're influenced by our surroundings. Right now, everything I have to keep in glass jars or it gets mushy, because we have a lot of humidity right now here.
Yeah.
So, but yes, usually yes. Roasting is usually a higher temperature because you are also imparting color and caramelization and all that stuff.
Our oven has bake, convection bake, roast, convection roast. And I'm just guessing. I don't know whether I should do what and when, but if it says roast and it's a vegetable, I roast it versus baking it, but I don't know where it's different.
Yeah, well, like I said, the newer, fancier ovens have all these settings, and it is good to know what it means. For example, I was in Tuscany.
Convection, it makes
Right.
it circulate all around.
It
with the
circulates,
fluids.
yes.
Yeah.
And they will also they will cook differently. So it's important to know.
Yeah.
I was in Tuscany in San Fedele in the kitchen, and I was making a cake, for example. And the head chef there was telling me that I could cook this cake in 20 minutes. And I said, no, I can't. And I said, if you do, it's going to burn. And he said, no, it's not going to burn, and it's going to cook quicker. So those are great settings. I would learn about them because you could, because they do, it's sometimes the temperature goes up and down at a certain time, and it's wonderful to have that addition. So see if you have the manual, what it is. But if you're doing all right with the way it is, then, but basically, as Cindy said, convection is the circulation of air, which is great, especially for roasting and things like that. You can also bake a cake that way, but it's important to know what temperature then to put it on. Because if you put it at 350, it will burn and it won't cook inside. So you need to know what the temperature means in the oven.
The convection roast and base and bake tend to be a lower temperature. It tends to
Yes.
suggest.
You always, yeah. Usually convection is lower because of the circulation of the air.
It's just hotter.
It's hotter. It creates more heat, but it's great because it goes all around.
It cooks more evenly.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Where were we?
Okay.
Roasting. All right, we're moving away from roasting now for a second. And we're going into marinating. Marinating is
Hey, love, love, love.
Now, marinating, people associate with meat or fish. But I have learned lately that marinating vegetables and fruit is wonderful. And it doesn't take as long. I'm on this kick now because it's summer of grilling things. And so I love to grill shiitake mushrooms. And so I marinate them in, and I'm going to show you some products that I like to use. I don't use many, and I don't like to use, I'm a vegan. I'm not really a vegan because vegans sometimes have an extremely unhealthy diet because they eat a lot of processed foods like those burgers, which from time to time I do enjoy, but they're not. In my mind, they're made up, they're synthetic, and they are really great when you're hankering for something, but there's a lot of fat and sodium. And when you change a pea, when you change the molecular structure of a vegetable or a fruit or an oil, it's not good. It's not good for you. And you can still eat it. I'm not telling you not to. I'm just giving you my opinion. So I make my own patties. I try not to call them burgers because they're patties. I like patties. So anyway, this is coconut aminos. It's my go-to all things. I love it. It's not because we don't eat soy. Soy is not great for women of a certain age because estrogen is been known to cause breast cancer. So and my partner has had breast cancer, so we stay away from anything that causes estrogen to go up. Stress, however, has not been one of the things we've been able to control lately. But you can also use these guys, Dr. Bragg. This does have soy in it. It's not as much soy because it also has other things, but it's a natural soy sauce alternative, which is misleading because if you look in, there also is soy, but it's not bad. So I use both of these. But for marinating, I love this because it's a little sweet. I would love for you to get some. It's a little sweet. And sometimes if I want a balance that's a little more salty, I use a little of both. So I use this.
I have a question. You use the coconut aminos for marinating?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I use that. Here's what I use also for the you can use whatever you want. I'll tell you what I use, and I can tell you, you can talk about alternatives. I use that, and I use smoked paprika. I use for the bacon. If I'm gonna grill, I may just throw a little in, but I don't necessarily use it. But I just sliced, I was gonna do it for you, but I didn't know if we were gonna do this. So we're gonna do more of this when we go into the more cooking stuff. Because next time, we're gonna really cook, and I'll show you a lot of things that I do and techniques. But this year, he got me off guard. This week, this day, wherever we are. Anyway, so you slice the carrots with a peeler, and then you marinate them in this smoked paprika, garlic powder. It's crazy because I'm Italian and I use a lot of fresh garlic. I always have. But lately, I love using garlic powder. I would have poo-pooed it. I would have told you how wrong you were a while ago. But garlic powder is awesome because also my partner is allergic to garlic, but she tolerates the powder because it's more easily digested. So, and that's what this sort of eating program is about. The less your body needs to work at digesting, which is fruits and vegetables and grains and seeds and stuff like that, the healthier you are, the more energy you get, less toxicity stays in your body. I'm not going to talk about that anymore, unless you ask me a question about it. I don't want this to become a health show. I want it to become a sensual food show. Anyway, okay, so paprika, smoked paprika, garlic powder. I use a little sesame oil. But you can try that, and then taste it. And if it tastes really good, then you can either, if you have a dehydrator, which I use a lot, or you can put it in the oven, put the strips in the oven. And my mom did it the other day, and she said it worked great. Or your toaster oven even, whatever, and dry them out that way. Low heat, around 200 or so. Check them, make sure they're not burning. But the mushrooms, I'm salivating. I just want you to know. The mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, I put the coconut aminos, and then a little, my flavor profile is Asian. Or Italian or something Mediterranean like that, but I love Asian flavors. I love
So ginger or.
this ginger. Oh my God, ginger and I'll be there in a minute. Hold on.
Wasabi?
I do. You tell me, Patricia. What do I love? Okay. Help me out here. No. I'm my brain. You know, I'm old. And it's a pandemic. All of it is Asian. Oh, sesame oil, a little bit of sesame oil, stuff like that. I'm just drawn to it. So yeah, ginger. Ginger is another thing I use in the mushrooms. And then you leave, they an hour or so. I mean, if you did it I've never done it overnight. I don't know how bad could it be? And then you grill them. Oh my gosh, it's just delicious. My sister was here and she said she's trying to get off of meat. And she said, this is so good. And you can make sandwiches with them, and you can melt cheese on it if you want it, or whatever. We were talking about marinating. Yes,
Yeah.
Also fruit. Fruit is a great marinator too. You can marinate fruit. And since we're on fruit, I want to add that I love using fruit in cooking, in savory cooking. So one of my big loves is to use lemon zest. To me, lemon zest in savory cooking is like vanilla to bacon. I use it often, especially in a string bean salad or zucchini or whatever. It just adds, it's not sour because I'm not a big sour person, but it adds that essence of lemon, the real lemon flavor. Take away the sour, and what we associate with lemon is that lemon. That's lemon. Like limoncello is not made with the sour, it's made with the skin. And that's the lemon flavor that we're going for.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like Michael will know, if if I'm in the kitchen and I'm making a stew or something, meat or whatever, a stew or something, and there's an apple, half an apple on the table, or a pear or whatever, peach or whatever, I'll cut it up and throw it in there. Something that's going to cook a long time. Even with vegetable stews and anything, any sauce or anything, I use now dates all the time to sweeten. I don't use sugar. I use dates. So we have a lot of them as sugar. I have sometimes if I know I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff.
Is that dry dates or stuck together dates? Are they dry or
They're dried.
dry dates?
Dried. But I don't know. What do you mean? Because I know there are fresh dates with our yellow. But when I was in California, they were on the tree. They got like this.
They're beautiful. Yeah.
They're also they're really, really good for you. They're awesome for, they have a lot of great vitamins and minerals and great detoxing properties in here. So I sometimes use a date puree. I have it in my fridge, and I'll keep that on hand for when I want to add sweetness to baked goods or whatever. I use that, or sauces or whatever. And also I make a raw tomato sauce, and I'll throw a date in there. And because now probably I wouldn't need to, but often we want a little sugar, but I wouldn't use sugar because sugar is sweet. You want, like I would make risotto, and in the battuto, which is the onions and the whatever flavoring you're going to put in there, I would put a slice or two of anchovy. You would never taste the anchovy, but it adds depth and it adds a little texture. Same thing with dates. It's not just sweet, it has a flavor. It isn't just a taste, there's a flavor. And so you're adding a flavor, not just a taste. Are you following me? The difference? Okay.
Mhm.
Okie dokie, dehydrating, which I told you a little bit about. But let me show you one of my favorite products, which I was making myself. And then, I started this 3 years ago. They had nothing that you could buy. And I still don't encourage a lot of, foods that you can buy. But these things, these are called mushrooms. They're called mushrooms. I'm going to put it here because maybe you can see it better. These are wonderful. You can buy them in a lot of different places. If you want, you could take a screenshot if you want. Or, do you know if you press Control-click 3, you just automatically take your whole screen?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Anyway, so these are wonderful. They come in different flavors. And look at this. Michael, put on
What did you say? Control what?
Control-click 3. Instead of Control-click 4, which is going to highlight something, but
What do you mean by click?
I don't know. Or shift
Control-
and 3 will do it.
Control Shift 3.
shift, sorry. What am I talking about? Control shift.
Shift Command 3.
And I think it's really Command Shift 3.
Shift Command 3. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, people. You're awesome. Okay, so I just want you to get the crisp. Whoops, where's my camera? No.
No, come down.
There we go.
A little bit. Yo.
Where the hell's the camera?
No.
Further away from you.
Further away. Yeah.
There it is.
There you go.
Well,
Good. A little down. Down.
just not understanding the.
Go towards the mushrooms. Go towards the label. Go towards the label. There you go.
No!
Back up a little bit.
Where's Julia Child?
Yes, right.
Anyway, listen. You didn't hear it.
No,
They're crispy.
they're crispy.
I hear that. Oh my God, they're so good.
Huh.
Oh, wow.
Who
They're
knew?
delicious. So I really just eat them like that. I eat them like that as I'm cooking something. And I throw them though in, which I'm going to do in a minute. I hope we have some, we have.
Shroom.
When I'm making a sauce or something, I throw these in there because they're very intense flavor of mushroom. I'm away from me now, I like peanuts. And they're very, very umami. Very, very umami.
Yeah.
So those are awesome. So dehydrating, is a wonderful thing to do. And it's like jerky, intense meat flavor, right? So reducing comes in handy, obviously, when we're doing sauces, but also in ways that you might not think. And it helps with unforeseen circumstances. So I use a lot of zoodles, and we are going to cover that. Next week is zucchini. Next time we're going to do zucchini because everybody's got zucchini. And it's what's for dinner a lot. So, and it is a sort of, I love zucchini because it is also has a lot of great vitamins and in it, and it's really good for you. But it also is like a canvas. You can use it for anything. I use it a lot for thickening. Even I'll just throw a piece of zucchini in there to thicken a sauce or whatever, without then having to use cream or cornstarch or whatever. And you're getting nutrition as well. So I make zoodles, and what I do is I zoodle them, and then everybody knows what a zoodle is, right? A zucchini noodle.
I had it
No idea.
last night. I love it. I've recently just found them. They're amazing.
Well, next time make them.
Tell me what they are.
I need a spiralizer. Right.
Tell me what they
There's zucchini noodles. All right, I'm going to show you I was going to do this next week, but inquiry minds want to know, so I'll show you mine.
Okay.
It's worth the investment. It's not that much cash, and it's really great. It's better than there's the handheld one too. I threw it somewhere because after I got this, I thought I'm not doing that anymore. This is a zoodleizer. Michael, go to my.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is wonderful. Like when I first started using it, we used it a lot. And I'd call my mom and I go, Mom, I'm making pasta, because you actually do it like that. And so she would laugh at me because she knew I wasn't. I was making noodles. But you do feel like you're making pasta, and that's what you're doing. And they have different attachments. There's this for small, and then they have bigger, bigger, and bigger. And they have a ribbon one too, I believe. Yes, they do.
Ah,
So you can make all different sizes, and it's really great. And you literally stick the whole thing in the sink and wash it off, and it's wonderful.
what is the brand?
This is OXO,
Oh, yeah.
OXO.
Yep.
But they do a couple other different brands, and they're good too. You
Yeah.
know, as long as it does that. But they have the one you do by hand, and that was too frustrating. I didn't want to do that anymore.
What else would you put in there besides zucchini? What else would you zoodle?
Anything, zucchini, you could do a sweet potato, carrots, cucumbers, anything that's firm and can go through that. I think, I want to say I tried cabbage, but I don't think it worked good.
Can't
I don't
imagine
know.
that.
Yes. What'd you say?
Can't imagine cabbage.
No.
Well, you'd have to cut it in a way that it could fit on here. You know, you'd have to, like, I think one time I had a piece of cabbage and it kind of worked. Because this is just like a grater. It's like a grater here.
Yeah.
I don't know, but anything, you know, that will go in here. Potato, you could do potato.
Yeah.
Cylinder.
Okay.
Yeah. Cylindrical. I keep losing that every time we cut away. I just want to see you all. And so, what was I saying? Oh, reducing, yes. So I make the now zucchini has a lot of water in it. So I usually salt it and let it sit for a while. So I got this big bowl of zucchini noodles and I salt them, and then it goes down and all the water comes out, and then I squeeze them out. Often I just like them like that because,
Okay. Yeah.
and I'll heat them up. The more you cook them, the more water is going to come out, and the more watery they're going to get.
Fall apart.
But they have this wonderful, when you salt them, not only it breaks them down a little, because that's what salt does, and so they're al dente. You know, they're really a lovely, lovely texture, in my opinion. And then if you want to heat them, if you're making a warm sauce, you know, you can heat them in the sauce. But then what happens sometimes is like so we're going to go through the ways that I cook it, and you make the whatever you're going to do in the pan, and then you throw in the zoodles, you warm it through, or you cook it longer, or you're sauteing it, whatever it is you're doing. Sometimes what happens is when they get warm, they leach out more liquid. And I had a friend who was telling me, you know, it's terrible because then I got to make extra sauce, I don't put it in, and because the water comes out and I have to throw out the water. Don't throw out anything. Never throw out, because you know what's in there? Flavor. There's flavor that's come out of there. So you take out the zoodles and put them over here, and in the pan, if a flat pan is how you're going to reduce the best. On the stove, and you cook it at a little higher temperature, do not cover it, reduce it, and then you put it back in. So you're just reducing and intensifying the flavor that just came from that. I've done that with stews. I've done it with meat, you know, all kinds of things. So never throw away flavor. Always try to bring it to a way to a point where you can put it back in. Questions about that? Same with the tomato sauce. Sometimes it's just watery. You know, if you're making especially a fresh tomato sauce, just reduce it a little bit, and yeah, that's it. All right. I'm going to give you a second step about intensifying flavor. I'm going to go around and hear what you all want to know about, and then we'll go into a little more, and then and then I'll show you a couple of things that we're going to cook or prepare. Right. Pulverizing. Pulverizing is another thing. So whether you're pulverizing something, if you want, like these guys, you know, you want to do these mushrooms, and you want to make them into a powder so that they, or into a sauce, so you can disperse the flavor. Sometimes I will do that instead of putting a chunk of mushroom, which you can also do, but don't skip that other step of wanting to impart it into the whole thing. We use sometimes pieces of things and we're waiting for them to go through. And then what happens often is you lose the flavor of the mushroom, it goes into that, but now that doesn't taste like anything, you know? It's like making soup. You know, we want really the carrots, we're imparting the flavor into the broth because that's what we want to do it. So when you take out, my grandmother used to say, nah, the carrot's not so good, put a little olive oil on it. Because all of that flavor has gone into the soup and so you're left with a carrot that's But we don't do that if we want to, like when she would boil the carrots to make the salad, you wouldn't do that. So just keep in mind that, you know, you can do that with nuts, you can do it with roasted sesame seeds, you can do it with the dried mushrooms, anything, along with pureeing, same thing. You would puree something instead of using the entire article. I know it's counter to what I said before, but sometimes you want to do that to spread it out and to infuse the flavor. I think I already talked about using fruit and savory, how that adds texture and depth and subtleness to sweet without being sweet, but it's that thing. I'll say to people, you know, what do you taste in here? I go, there's something sweet in there, but they don't know what it is. And maybe it's not too sweet, but it's a little something. So, and that's how to get, it's a great balancer. So when you're cooking something, you go, oh, I need it. Don't put sugar in it. Try to think of something else that will also add texture to balance that. Herbs and spices and profiles. We talked a little bit about that. We know that herbs are these things, and spices are usually like you have coriander, and then you have cilantro, which is the spice of you have fennel seed and the fennel. This actually is fennel from the garden, and it's not the fennel that produces the vegetable. There are 3 different things you can do that you can grow with fennel. This is the herb, and it looks like dill. And in Italy, and especially in Tuscany and in parts of Sardinia and other places where it grows, it's often used in a lot of their cooking. It's a great dish that I had in Sardinia that you could do because it's bread, but you got to get Italian bread, like real bread. And my friend Beppe made it, and it's old bread. You make a stock with a lot of this and some onion. And so now you got the stock, and you got these guys too. And you layer the dry bread in your pan, in your baking pan. And then you put the stock on there, olive oil and cheese, grated. Pecorino would be the best thing, but fresh, not the dry. You could put a little Parmesan if you don't have grated pecorino. And you keep doing that. And then these guys go in there in each level too, which were in the stock. And then you bake it. Oh my God, it's really awesome. So if you want to come over and get some, I have some for you to use. You could also use the fronds of the regular fennel to do that particular thing and to put in your salads. I use it all the time to put in salads because it's just a little bit. I don't know how many of you like the fennel vegetable, but it's lovely. It's a lovely thing to put in raw or cooked, sauteed,
Roasted.
or roasted. Oh yeah, it's really, really good. I'm so salivating. So herbs are these, spices are the seeds of things, of like the coriander and cinnamon. It's either bark or seed. Cinnamon is a bark. And yeah, any questions about that?